Hello, friends of software entertainment, and a warm welcome to a new live coding sessions with CypressIO and Design Patterns, and our special guest directly from Mexico, Gilberto alias Mexitester. Welcome to our show.
Thank you, Ronald. Very happy to be here with your people and with you guys. I'm really excited. As Ronald mentioned, I'm from Mexico. Uh, this is my alter ego. I really try to create in order to, try to mix between two passion that I have: testing and Mexican wrestlers. So I create this character. It's a fusion of two Mexican wrestlers. I think so the most famous is um, Rey Mysterio from WWE. But really, I'm really happy. Yeah, thanks for the invitation.
Yes, I think you will afraid all bugs and catch them with this outfit. You are also YouTuber. Everything is linked here in the video description from you. Design patterns and Cypress.io. What problem solve this technique for you?
Roland, I think soon when we're talking about testing specifically uh, in automation, also we have or we don't have the truth. We don't have very good knowledge about design patterns. You in the developers, in their perspective, they know the big number of design patterns that they have in order to create better and clean code, combining with principles like solid. But in my personal opinion, when we're talking about the testers that become the automation engineers or want to become developers, we don't know really the big world that we are facing and the big number of solutions that we have. Well, we have patterns in automation. One is page object model. In simple words, you have a web page, web elements, and you need to map into a page class. But maybe other is screenplay. Screenplay it's a pattern that helps you to combine the first two principles of the solid, like the single responsibility and an open close. The implementation is right now is very good for the people that start doing it. We have a framework called Serenity, for example, Serenity BDD that implements perfectly. But those are the only patterns that we implement, or I saw in the majority of the projects that the testers or my teams are implementing. But when you open your mind, when you go through the design patterns, you see you are able to see that you have decorator, strategy, fluent, factory, and those patterns are misunderstanding on the test automation by the testers. So this is for the reason I want to talk about this topic because I think I'm not implementing 100% of the pattern because as I mentioned, there are a lot of, but I think so you can implement some of those, and then if you want to increase or reduce the number of maintenance, you can go and search for the other kind of patterns that we have in the development world.
What do you think is the right point to start with it? So when you make some simple tests like testing navigations and your search form and your filters for your e-commerce applications, and maybe you have five tests, something around this running, maybe 1 minute or something like this. Is this the way to start with it, or do you need much more complex applications?
No, no. Well, definitely the complexity of the framework and the adding those design pattern could be proportional to the application. If it's a simple application, I definitely don't say you need to implement a big bunch of design patterns. But normally in the real life, when we have business application, e-commerce, bank, healthcare applications, those have their own areas and our specific functionalities and flows that you need to follow. So in general, the implementation based on how hard is your application to test. So if your application is hardest to test, definitely the number of patterns that you're going to use could be biggest than a maybe simple application. We can say simple application, like a simple e-commerce where you have uh, different APIs, different calls. But yeah, so if your application is bigger and is hardest, definitely the number of design patterns is bigger because they will help you to solve kind little pieces of problems that you're facing. If the application is low in based on complexity, you can reduce the number of it.
Okay, so yeah, maybe we go forward to your presentation and check out what design patterns are.
Yeah, just let me share. Okay, okay. Yeah, uh, we call this talk how to use the same pattern. Uh, why Cypress? Cypress is one. Personally, Cypress is one of the newest and easy tool to start doing automation testing. Uh, we have another tools. One of the I think so the first place or the biggest is Selenium with different binding languages. Definitely, Playwright is another player that is definitely working as expected and with a good expectation for the testing side. But Cypress was, in my opinion, the second tool because it was built before Playwright that the people start taking by their own in order to test their application. The JavaScript is also a simple language that the people that really don't know how to go through can just and start looking into testers that they don't have like a strong and technical background. They can start learning and in easy basis. So we're gonna talk about the design patterns. Some of those, let me go through what are those kind of design patterns. But well, I
At
def
this point, you have directly to start with TypeScript, or can you also do this in JavaScript? Or what is your recommendation for JavaScript and TypeScript in CypressIO?
yeah, my personal history was about I was working with Selenium Java, so Selenium Java and C Sharp. Imagine those two programming languages are strong type programming languages. When one client decide to change to another programming like was JavaScript, for me was a headache definitely because JavaScript is like doesn't matter. I try to do by my best. You don't need to specify strongly what is a string, what is a number, the parameter that you're sending. So you are free to do a lot of stuff. The problem with that is when you're coming from these strong strong type programming languages, you are very I can say square, very structured, or you are not like why JavaScript give you all this option. So if you come from this kind of programming languages, definitely TypeScript is a good option because TypeScript was created by the guy who created C Sharp. So it, it could give you this the very similar syntaxes from Java or C Sharp. If you are new in the world of programming languages, definitely JavaScript is a better option because it's not so strong, it's not so square, so you can be free or you can start learning faster what you are using JavaScript. So this is my personal history, my personal recommendation. I have talked with people that came from the same line, same Java and C Sharp, and it was very similar. They start with TypeScript because it was faster and easier for them try to understand this super set of TypeScript than rather than JavaScript.
Okay, so I came from PHP, so no types everywhere. And I also use TypeScript. It brings me a lot of improvements. And normally I work together with front-end teams that work with React or Vue or whatever. And when you want to work with them and to be a partner to them, you must go with TypeScript, otherwise you
Mm.
will not find friends in the team. So far, so good.
Yeah, I think so. For example, the people that came from Python, it's almost similar. The same. At the end, well, at the end, the programming languages has the same loops, the same decision flows. So the way that they manage their data, the data structures maybe is kind of different. But yeah, in general, uh, one of the advantages and disadvantages at the same time for Cypress is that you can use TypeScript and JavaScript only. For most people, it's like that's good enough to do it, but for other people, is like I want to use my own program language. But that is a personal opinion. I think so. If you know one or two or three programming languages, came to Cypress and start writing tests in TypeScript or in JavaScript, could be kind of easy if you know the basic of the programming and the basic of the programming oriented processes, because all the same patterns and all these principles that we have in development became from polymorphism, inheritance, and the basics, the object oriented programming. It's I forgot the word, but yeah, that's the
Yeah, no
idea.
problem.
It's a paradigm. Yeah, the object paradigm. Sorry. Okay, let me continue. Well, those are my social media. I have working 12 years in IT as a tester in general. No, I could have the grateful or the option to be or start as a developer, because my background is not in software development. My background is in electronics engineering.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, I'm not a software developer since my college. I was an electronic engineer. I started in testing because I started my university activities on a company that they was perfectly IT company, and they train me in testing in general. So was like 6 months learning a complete career. So was kind of hard. I still continue learning, but well, that's in few words my history and why I'm trying to start learning about people like you know, the developers that are successful in the IT world. Uh, simple agenda. Got the same pattern. I think I know the people that is part of your channel. The majority of the people they know it. Maybe other people they don't know, but we try to see in the same line what is the same pattern, the types, and in this part specifically, for example, page object model, where is included or in which classification it's included, uh, the importance in test automation, because the importance in software development maybe we have on our points. I don't think so because those are very similar. But the important specifically in test automation, we're going to talk about the famous or in some cases infamous page object model. We're going to have this decorator pattern, a real explanation, fluent interfaces, factory pattern, strategy, and I'm going to show you then a simple test and how the classes are structured using obviously Cypress. Uh, I think so. In order to start with this conversation, Ronald, and I know you have been talking about different topics, in this case, design patterns. Uh, how do you perceive the design patterns, Ronald?
Yeah, I maybe I use design patterns and even do not know that I'm using it.
Oh,
But yeah, I think I have nothing to do with it. I see a book or something like this about this, but I'm not working so far with it. So yeah, I want to see it and think that it solves maybe the complexity and readability of my tests.
Yeah, as you mentioned, maybe we're doing it, but we don't know what we're doing in the same time. So because that was one of the problems that I was facing when I started trying to looking into design pattern and say, oh, I was in some other projects. I was implementing that. I really didn't know the name, or I know the intention. I know the problem that they were solving, but I didn't know that each problem solving has their own name. So if we know the name, we can implement faster what we need in the code that we are implementing. And not only in JavaScript, not only in Java, we can just implement it in PHP, Python, Ruby, and the number of programming languages that we have right now, and actually, that we're facing. So this is just a quick patterns are usually presented in a formal and detailed manner to allow their application in various contexts. Generally, the description of the patterns include this section. The first one is the purpose. The purpose means the pattern provides a concise summary of the problem, its address, and its corresponding solution. So this is important. Patterns, a specific solution, because we think the design pattern will solve all our life, and it's not the truth. If we don't have a problem, please don't search that problem in your project. We have the motivation, why we need to use uh, this. The motivation section delves into the problem and how the pattern offer an effective solution. And we have an structure. The structure is like an example how we can implement in different programming languages. The structure is not related to a programming language. It's related to how we can implement, how we can imagine that we can implement in our projects, in our software. And the land we have the code example, and this is specific to a programming language. The structure is not. Code example is focused on how to implement using our programming language.
Okay.
Yeah, we have three different types uh, that we can evolve all our design patterns. The first is the creational. Uh, as the name says, you want to create something in order to doesn't modify something previously created. This creational provide ways to create objects, increasing flexibility and promoting the reuse of the code that we have. The second is behavioral. How will be the behavior of my application or my code in order to solve this kind of issues? This gives us a combination of object and classes into large structures, ensuring both flexibility and efficiency of these structures. And the last one is structural. Structural focus on facilitating effective communication between classes and objects and the correct distribution of the responsibilities. And maybe the this kind from the single responsibility comes or from other pick that or are the design principles. But yeah, so we have those three: creational, behavioral, structural. That doesn't mean you all the time will use creational, or all the time needs to use behavioral, or only be structural um, structural guy. You must, I definitely suggest to people, you must combine them, because when you are combining them, you create a better solution, an easy maintenance, and a faster way to create your code based on those design on those classification that we have right now. Let's see the creational or those types of and the scope that they have. Because why they are put it in three different types? Because they have something that they can do and something that they cannot. So, for example, creation is structural and behavioral. The class scope and object scope. When we are creating our classes, when we're creating our objects, we can say when we're talking about creational factory is a class scope, a structural, the adapter at level of class, and the page object model because we are manipulating specifically classes, and interpreter in the behavioral. Those are those are the design patterns that we are using into class scope. In object scope, we have this big number of design patterns. For creational, we have Astro Factory, Builder, Prototype, and Singleton. Singleton, those are to manipulate objects. Those objects can manipulate at runtime. This is the so what we need to do. In the structural, we have other big number adapter, but in object level, composite, decorator, facade, bridge, flywheel, proxy, and behavioral. We have template method, fluent interface, command, iterator, mediator, memento, observer, strategy, and visitor. As I mentioned, we have a big number of design patterns. You don't need to implement all your code. Just try to implement the design patterns that really solve your problem, that really are solving all the problems that you have. So this is the screenshot of the design patterns that we have and how we can classify based on the scope that they are having instead of the type. The importance of design patterns right now, specifically in test automation. We have design patterns that definitely play a vital role in our test frameworks, in our test cases, in our test automation in general, offering number of advantages and benefits that really will enhance effectiveness of automated tests, create a good code, create a good maintenance, create faster book solving or debugging in our case. Uh, the first point that it's an important, very important, is improve code readability by providing a structure and standard approach. So maybe I know Roland, you can tell me if you in your test projects you have faced different kind of tests that are very complex, or maybe combine, or maybe become an spaghetti code. I don't know if you
Yes, sure. I have an example where I use a test what is maybe going through pages, and then I have something like a validate page, and
Mm,
in this validate page I use a very verification of images, of status codes,
got it.
of no JavaScript errors, and something like this. And then I sometimes ask myself how I can make this with parameters that I can say on this page, please make this kind of test. And then I have this magical options object with so many different kind of settings that I'm totally confused even when I see it by myself. I think this is something like this.
And yeah, it's very normal to have this kind of um, situations that we don't know how to handle it. It's very common when we're working on test automation. Uh, at the end, based on the project, based on the time, based on the productivity of the members, the real state is that we are we're gonna select the all the test cases are running instead of all the cases are well structured and running. The problem comes when we need to debug, when we don't know what is the error, and that will be a completely headache for all the engineers that are working on it. So, well, design patterns could help us to reduce the headache, not remove it completely, but will help us to reduce it. And also promotes code reusability, a crucial aspect of efficient test automation. And the last point is to have long-term impact on test automation efficiency and effectiveness. That is something that we as a tester, we as a test automation engineer, we as a developer, we as a part of the quality process, we need to be sure we are efficient, we have efficiency and we are effectiveness. Because if we don't have those two in the same line, we're doing something wrong and we can go back, see what we are doing and try to improve in order to have this long-term impact for this efficiency and this effectiveness. Let's just start with the, as I mentioned, famous and infamous page of your model. Some people love it, some people hate it. Uh, we can discuss about it. I don't know if you have heard about this pattern, Ronald.
I use it a lot and cannot understand the discussion about it. And I do not have another way to do it. Yeah, for our users here, a page object model is something where we can handle our selectors and make them on readable properties. And then we can just easily reuse this in our tests. And then we have only one place where we find the selectors when they change. And the other big advantage is that CSS selector is not readable like a login button or something else. And when I have something like a checkout page and then I have the checkout button, then I have it in my auto completion and I can read the whole code and I understand the code and can understand where I am. And without a page object, I don't have any chance to do it.
Definitely. As you say, something that we can say could help us. I'm not saying it's the real true or it's the only true. Is to help the communication between the developers in order to create better ways to identify the objects in the web page. Because as a tester, we normally don't do it. We only try to go through the elements, try to extract the ID, the CSS selector, the XPath, the whatever ID the framework or the tool give you access, but we never have a meeting or a consensus about what will be the best way to identify the objects in order to do it easier for the people that is building the software and easier for the people that is building the testing in general. So this I think is a key point, because if you are seeing that your objects are so complex in order to identify them, you can talk with the developer team, say, hey, why we don't create a strategy in order to have better understanding of the element or the web elements, or if we're talking about mobile, of the mobile elements that we are using and creating and manipulating. So I think so this could be a good discussion about the real benefits, the real why it's useful or why it's not useful. But yeah, in general, page of view model is we have elements in the web page. We're talking about web, in mobile. We're talking in screens in mobile, and we have different elements: text boxes, buttons, labels, and inputs, and all those stuff. And we need to map into a class in order to split those flows and create those elements inside, and also adding the actions that we need to perform. This is the I don't know, the UML, how we can just do it some simple, the element, and in this case the action that we can create, the action that we can perform. And in the left side we have a simple class, simple class that we have the username, how in this case it's simple, I think it's a simple expat. We can just see a selector in Cypress specifically. XPath is not so native, so you can use plugin. I normally don't use XPath in here in Cypress. I normally use the different weights that it helps to identify all objects, and the normal is a CSS selector, something that if you came from Selenium, it could be easier to you to implement in order to do it. So we have here the actions that we need to perform, and we can create a big method. So, for example, the normal and the most common example that we saw is how to create a new login. In this case, visit, type the username or fill the username, fill the password, and then click on submit. We have this ability to create a page, and what are the actions that we perform over the page. The problem, and discussion, also you probably mentioned, Ronald, is that in this case you can create this spaghetti code, because if you have thousands of elements or even less than 100 elements, as you need to add them into the class, you need to add also the actions that you need to perform. This real page or class page will be unreadable. So in that case, we need to use another techniques. For example, the screenplay that help you to split between the elements and between the action that you're going to perform based on the flow. That's an example.
Yeah, I'm very excited how you will solve this. Yes, I definitely know the problem and understand the example. I think this is also not a way to make here something like a do login, where you say with a login page, fill username and then end and map this in other mappers. I think this is not the answer.
Hmm. Definitely.
We will see what we can do. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what is the problem that I start talking about, because we only in the 60% of the project that I have been working, this is the only design pattern implemented. And as you mentioned, if the application increase, and obviously will increase, the problem with the code is reduce the usability, the readability, and it becomes an unuseful framework. And one of the problem I see right now in the company that I'm working is that they really don't know that the test automation is something successful, because we start doing and doing and doing and doing, and when we have a big bunch of test suite and test info and code, that doesn't become very maintainable. And I think so in the 40% of the projects I have seen a test automation, something that is really that is failing, and it's a failure project, and it's something that the client decide to don't start doing it again, or modifying or increasing, because they don't see the real return of investment and the real value to start working on automation. And that is one of the problems. We only focus on page object model, and we don't see out of the box. So we have another cool pattern is Decorator, and very simple. So a simple explanation. Obviously, I say the implementation, the code maybe could be kind of tricky, but we will try between Ronald and myself to define how to do it. So the decorator pattern I will explain, and then I want to know the comments from Ronald. It's we have a human, normal human, and we can give this human clothes. We can dress with formal clothes. We can put it on. We can put it different clothes, or we can use the normal dress code or something casual in order to do it. So this is the character. The human, in few words, doesn't need this kind of dress in order to do it. But when we need it, we can implement. If it's cold, we can use a jacket. If it's not, we can remove the jacket from ourselves. So this is the correct one. When we need it, we're gonna use it. That doesn't mean we need to use all the time. This guy that we is our people in church must be with this dress or with this dress. That is simple as it. But even he can combine kind of the clothes that he is dressing and he's gonna dress. So, but not all the times needed. So the UML is we have our decorator in general in words. This decorator, an example in testing could be decorator that give us locks, or if you are using, for example, a driver or a browser, we can just decorate if you were that browser. For example, I want the Chrome with this kind of profile, or I want Firefox with this kind of cookies.
Yeah, this is super cool because I always have this console log and then just a function name and without any informations about what parameters are in there.
hmm hmm and you, the other cool thing is that you can implement only when you need. That doesn't implement it in all the
In
lines of the
every
code.
yes.
Yeah. If you need it in one specific place, decorate it. If not, don't need it. But you have the class waiting for being used. So I don't know in your test, Ronald, maybe you have implemented, or it's not that you are not.
Yeah, I'm super excited because I have an Cypress plugin what gives you 10 base tests and
Oh yeah,
yeah, but directly I want to replace the stuff because this makes it so much better. It's a great inspiration so far.
definitely, definitely something that gives better understanding. And when something is failing and we are starting debugging, instead of having the console log all the times, we have some function that will help us to see what is happening in the failure. Okay, Fluent interface. This is a design pattern that I normally use because in some cases the people use one tool, or yeah, it's a specific tool, a programming tool called Cucumber with Gherkin. So they are implementing, or well, try to implement something called BTD, behavior driven development. Behavior driven development is very complex in implementation, but the people start working with this kind of tools that give you something that is readable at business level. I don't know if you have been working with Cucumber or no.
Okay.
Have you ever working with Cucumber or Gherkin?
Cucumber, I saw a very big legacy project,
Mm-hmm.
and Gherkin I wrote in Codeception a few years
Oh,
ago. I think sometimes that this description and yeah, also the description in the it part of Cypress test are doing something like this. My understanding is that people who do not write code can do something like a sense, and you can make functions on the words in the sense. And I, in my life, I think this is much over engineered because nobody, I do not know anybody who is not coding who is writing tests.
yeah, definitely. Is what you said is the perfect description of why I always say don't use it. Because as I mentioned, behavior development is a process that performs discovery, formulation, and automation. But the truth is it's a combination between the people that are not technical and the people that are technical. But become or try to go to that specific and level of understanding, it's about the all the members that are working, developers, testers, business analysts, owners, even scrum masters, the designers. So I haven't seen a real project where the VDD is very well implemented in order to implement Cucumber as well as is needed. So I normally say don't use it. And Fluent interface, I prefer Fluent interface because give you the option to do more readable test cases. One example that we can say, the login page that we have previously on the page of your model, In some cases, we have one method, say login, no, and we have two parameters. But what those parameters means really, or we have a method with seven parameters, and we really don't know what is the flow or why we need those parameters. So in this case, based on the Fluent interface pattern, the refactor is in this new line. When we create our page, what is the next step is visit, or we can say visit my own application. And what is the other step that I need to follow? I need to fill the username. And what is the other name that is other step that I have to follow in the test? I need to fill the password because in my test I need it. And at the last, I need to submit. So instead of having one method with multiple parameters, and we really don't know, or we need to write or put comments on this method needs two parameters. The first parameter is the username, the second is password. We can use Fluent interface and use the method that we need. That doesn't mean if I have all these methods, I need to use them in one line. I can just only use one of those, or three, or four, or all. This is based on the test case that I am building. If I don't need, for example, fill the password in order to create an invalid test case and see the failure that is happening, so I didn't type this method fill password, but I can type visit, fill username, and then submit, because this is the flow that my test really needs in that moment. So for that reason, I normally strongly recommend Fluent interface instead of having, as you mentioned, this level of difficultness when we implement other kind of tools that the only thing that they are doing is doing something complex that instead of something easier. So I really know that in your code, Ronald, you are using Fluent interface because all the programming languages has this dot and then the action that need to perform. Have you ever seen this Fluent
Yes,
interface?
I'm thinking about it because yeah, when you chain a lot of methods,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you need a breakpoint, and then you will
Mm-hmm.
set this breakpoint in the login page directly.
Mm-hmm. Also,
Because when you have this downer part, yeah, it's not so easy to make a breakpoint and debug this stuff.
yeah.
And I'm thinking about it because normally when I'm writing a test, I want to debug at this point and not debugging in the page object. What do you think about this?
Yeah, definitely it's better than if you uh, go on the book for the specific level of users. In this case, test case level or class level or object level. Uh, yeah, and then if you need to debug, you need to go inside the method and start looking what is failing. In the first shot, yeah, definitely debugging is not easier because as it's a chaining way to do it, you don't know if the failure is on field username or password. Well, the tools give you some kind of clue to see what is, but at the end you need to go deeper and go through the methods in order to see if this is the first method I'm using. This is the method that I am facing the error. If not, I need to go to other methods. So yeah, in the debugging part, definitely I'm agree with you. It's not easy and it's one of the weakness that we can face on.
Also here, I think yes, this is perfect example where you have to use your logger interface because when you will see this test here
Mhm.
in the open browser window tool, then you will just see login page with so you see wizard slash login and then input name username and you definitely do not know on what part of test application you are when you only see the console from the tool. Do you
Yeah.
have any kind of solution for this issue? Because the problem is that I see here totally clear fill password, and I know that yeah, maybe it's an ID password or something like this. But when we have an hard reading CSS selector, then I do not know where I am in the code.
Yeah. Uh, Let me continue with some parts, and maybe
Okay.
we can see if we can solve that specific problem that you are mentioned. That is something definitely valid. Uh, let's see if we can do it. If not, we can go and see if we can solve it in one way. Yeah, another is factory pattern. Factories, as it's simple as we have, for example, a factory. This is the idea, and the way to deliver a product could be different. Could be by truck, by airplane, or by bot, for example. So the factory doesn't matter which is the way that we are going to deliver it. The factory matters what they need to deliver. So in this case, the factory it's the the way to build what we need. We will see in the demo that we build our data. We build our data based on this kind of factories that we have. Uh, yeah, we have here the product. The way that we can create factory is very easy to implement. This example is very easy. Just for example, we have different users, we have different way that we are gonna log in into the application, and we create a factory based on the different users, admin, guest, or the normal user, or we can start adding and adding and adding, and based on the user that we need, it will create their own information. In this case, we're using an admin, so we need the admin info, and then we can manipulate instead of having all the times the data coded. That is something that we mustn't need to use. And instead of having something hard coded, or instead of having a way to encrypt or disable the access to the data, factory could be a good option to to do it. I know, Ronald, that this is some simple example, but do you have something similar with another way that you are using?
Mostly, I don't have this different kind of roles,
Mm,
and then it's that I have the user types maybe nearby like this in the environment variables, or that I have an environment JSON file where
mm-hmm,
you have this username and password separated in the structure.
mm-hmm,
But yeah, maybe with this kind of environment variables, maybe it's not there. Maybe some other types where I can use this type. I'm thinking about if I have a use case, but in my case, these are environment variables, and different users just have them in another place. So I
mm-hmm.
will. Yeah, I will not have them here in the code.
Yeah, as you mentioned, could be for better variables if you are using pipelines, or you're using Jenkins or Azure DevOps. This kind of info or factories could be helpful.
Also
Uh,
in the Cypress config file
mhm.
could be
Yeah.
when they are not on the pipeline environments. I think mostly I do not use pipeline variables to
Mm,
store something like this.
gotcha. Perfect. And yep, this is the factory pattern. Uh, this one is the strategy pattern. The strategy in this case is we have ways to transport to arrive to the airport. In this case, we have an airport, and we have different ways to or strategies. The first strategy is in bicycle. The second is in bus, and the third one, in order to arrive to the airport, is in a taxi. So depend of your needs. Maybe I don't have enough money, so the strategy could be use the bicycle or the bus. or I want to be something exclusive. I can select, for example, Uber or Didi or whatever kind of platform. So this is in general the strategy. What is a way to accomplish or to go through to my goal, my method I need to follow. So in the code, normally I I suggest, because it's not something that you must need to do. It's in the assertions. When we are talking about assertions, is the last step of your test, is what you need to validate. So in this code example, uh, we have all the classes in the same line. That doesn't mean that must be in one line in one code. So we have our assertion strategy, and it will be we need to use inheritance in order to start doing. We can use inheritance, or we can create interfaces, or we can create classes or after classes wherever you need. So in this case, the assertion strategy, it will give me the action that it's execute. In this case, I'm going to execute an assertion, like validate text, like validate if an element is present, or validate if an URL contains. Like here, URL assertion. It's extending from from the action, from the execute method, and then what I'm expecting in this case, the URL includes something, and this assertion, in this case, the selector, we are imagining that it's a label, and we're extracting the label, have text, the text that I'm expecting, another class. Uh, that is the way that we are implementing. And we have the context. This is the context that we're going to perform based on the strategy or the class that we are using. And we are going to put the strategy, in this case, what is strategy? Test assertion, or utilization, or visibility of element assertion, or whatever strategy that we need to do, and then execute the strategy. This method will execute, in this case, the URL, the expected test, the expected URL, or whatever strategy that we have been used on the context of the assertion that we're given. This is only because the tools normally have their own way to create assertion. In this case, Cypress has, for example, URL.should and include, or the selector should have dot text. And maybe one discussion point is, why do it more complex if we have the solution here? Because in some cases, something that I don't recommend is, in a test case, the people implement not only one validation, implement two or three or four, whatever number of validations. I normally suggest only implement one, maximum two validations, but in order to be sure that the test is specifically testing and expecting something in one specific assertion. If you put a lot of assertion, your test case uh, will be no shorter, and you are creating like a big monster, a big monster test case, when you are validating all, and all. And that is not a good way to do it. We need to try to do the test cases easier and reliable as the code that we need to use in our test cases. So the strategy pattern, what do you think about it? So this is more.
Yes, this is more hands-on. I think I
Mhm.
understand it much better. It's something like a kind that I make, yeah, something like a step. Yes, something is doing. I do something, and there are multiple assertions on this point run by this kind of wrapper. Yes, I think it's a way better, like my implementation so far, to just make a method and then call other methods. Yeah, I have to see. It's not the easiest way to go in. You have to think about something like this. If I
Mhm.
mean, ChatGPT and Claude 3 and every tool will help us to
Mhm.
make this work. But it's an, I think, yeah, you are using it and you believe in this thing, and When I see it now for the first time, the strategy pattern, it definitely makes some sense for me.
Mm, awesome. So those are the patterns, sorry, that we talk about it. And let me share with you, team, you people that is following us. This is a project that I'm working uh, in order to go deeper uh, into the design patterns. But yeah, so in general, I want to close it. The first is the decorators. We
Can
have,
you
for
maybe
example,
make the font size 2 points bigger?
oh yeah.
This
Mhm.
is there under preferences. File preference, because I do this here on my local preferences settings.
Settings.
And then you press settings, and then it is under text editor. Okay,
Hmm.
because I just find left text editor and font where the 5 is.
Mhm.
Well, I think
It's better.
it's
Awesome.
better. Yes, thanks a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. So let me. Okay. So okay. There we go. Those are. I'm gonna start with the test. And when you are working in Cypress, I recommend to split your test based on the functionalities. In this case, we have only two functionalities that I'm working on it. Students and simple login. Simple login is the steps that type username, type password. Let me open the application. Mhm. So press conf. I'm gonna show you quick what is the application that we're gonna work. Okay, this is an application that you can use, guys, to start playing, testing, start playing with different tools. But okay, let me just type the credentials. This application in general is in a school with, and we have different kind of roles: teacher, student, and admin. So this I love this application because we can interact with different elements, drop downs,
Mhm.
data time pickers. In that case, the example that I'm gonna show you, you saw the login, is the students. So for you go to the student menu and you are able to create a new student. We have this table with different information: student, full name, parent, address, phone, and actions that we can perform, like delete, edit, view, uh, view information. And the test that we perform is go to create new. We have a big bunch of items that we can interact: radio buttons, text boxes, type pickers, select drop downs. We're going to focus only on the items that are marked as must, as
Required fields, yes.
you need to use it, because we have a big number of items. So for instance, I really love this application. And then we need to submit, verify the student was added, and then delete it, because something that is important is when you are doing your test, please, and it's something that I need to say for for you guys, please, if the application start in one state and you start adding information, you start creating information, please delete all test information and do your application at the first state that you have. In this case, if I go to students, I have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, really are nine elements. Uh, don't move all this information. You can add your students in your application. You can add your items into the card. If it's healthcare, you can add then patient name. You can start doing your test, but at the end, please remove all these test data in order to have your application as the first state that you are seeing. So for that reason, if you are doing API testing, if you are doing mobile testing, if you're doing web UI testing, please remove all the test cases data, all the test data, sorry, that you have in order to have a clean QA environment in this case and it's for the way that we are seeing the environment. So this is the application, and those are the flows that we are going to use. In this case, we have the expect. The expect in this case uh, before the login, because in this case I have the base test when I am logging it, navigate, introducing the valid username, introduce the valid password, and I am implementing what is my pattern? Fluent interface. Uh, I could create a method in my login page that receive parameters like login, data, admin,
That's right.
uh,
Yes.
pass. This is something that you will see in a big number of frameworks or test suites. It's something that normally when we start working, we do. But for example, you're going to see what will happen if we have the method create students. You saw when we try to create students, we have a lot of data that must be implemented. One way to solve it, create a map of elements, a list of elements, and call, and then start calling inside the methods. But we will see how to implement in this case the Fluent. So I'm going to remove this. This is normal. This is the normal login because all the cases needed. And uh, for the login page, I have these pages. I'm going to explain why I split it into those. For example, I will start with base page. Base page, I consider the parent page when I can interact in the same way for all the menus. For example, I have the dashboard and my admin and my elements in admin are the same. It's the same for this elementary school. The teachers, if you can see, this element is it doesn't change from the page. But for example, the create new exists on teacher, exists on a student, exists on parent. The same element, we can identify the same element for the three, in this case, three menus. We can identify it, so it's something that they can share. I don't need to create a create new button on teacher's page, on a student page, or parent page. I only need to inherit from, and I can say just in this case, take the class or whatever you need, and it will be used in the different elements when we have the create new. So for that reason, I created this base page, something that other pages could share, and we can interact with the same object. We go to username, check if the username is visible, preloading. Something that I saw in projects when they are implementing Cypress, they try to use all these kind of methods in the command JS class. I just, it's a suggestion, in the command JS class, try to put only the methods that will be reusable, or you can implement the drive, don't write yourself principle. So, for example, create link, click on element, click on a link. In this case, I select drop down from item, check is visible. But those are actions that you can share with your different functionalities that you are trying to implement in your test cases. Select radio button is something very general. That doesn't mean it's specifically for the gender radio buttons that we saw in the application. This is for real table. This is a special method that read the table. In this case, If you remember, we have this table, read it completely, and if I need to extract or compare, for example, the parent of the student earner, I can compare the value. Or if I need to do or perform an action, I can do it based on the table. So for the reason I have, this is a button, an input, a link text, a select or text area in order to interact if we need it. This is not specifically for that table. If you have your own table with your own elements, you can reuse it definitely. Download file, something that you can use over your test and over your method. So in this base page, sorry, we have something that we can share. This is the create new. This create new I can share over the teacher page, over the student page, and over the parent page, for example. And the logout is something that you will see all the times, and
Mhm.
it's not dependent on how the page change. Uh, this is a simple login page. This is the example that may similar to the page, the example that you saw in the PowerPoint. But what I try to do, mostly than the field username, mostly than the field password, I try to create methods that are making more sense. For example, login as and the kind of username, this admin, if it's a teacher, if it's a student,
Mhm.
with password. So the next flow, in this case, I am using the Fluent interface. What is the next step? Well, with password. With kind of password, the password that I need to type. We saw and remember with checkbox. If we want to use it, if we want to implement it, check or uncheck, and at the end, login. This is in the base page, in the base test. Login as valid username with password, valid password, and login. Why? Remember, we don't need to have code information. So the information, as Ronald said, I put into my users. This is a JSON file, could be an Excel file, could be whatever other kind of file that you can share, SQL or information from SQL. That depends on your project. So I have the admin user, teacher user, student user, and in the same file, I create the invalid combination because I have this case that I want to validate that when I introduce invalid information, give me some error text or error prompts. So I put it in that. The same for the student. And a student is another JSON file with I can create multiple students. In this case, I'm only gonna use one. In this case, is female, Anthony, Stark, date of birth, blood group, current address, city, country, email, username, password, joining date. So how I'm going to extract information? Uh, Ronald tell us in a few minutes ago how, in this case, the student factory. The student factory needs to call my JSON file with the students, or I have the user factory, or I have another factory that we share. And I need to extract, in this case, is maybe not the most efficient, but in this case, I only have one element. So extract the only element that I have is good enough to do it. And create a method, get call students, that retrieve me all the information that I need from the number of students that I have. If I have 3, 4, 10, 1,000 number of students, I'm gonna extract here and iterate over those students with all those parameters that we saw that are gender, first name, last name, blah blah blah, date of birth, blah. For user factory, it's almost the same. I need to use the invalid users. What if I use an empty username, an empty password and username? So I am just calling from my users, my user JSON file. And I have another special that is a manufacturing that instead of having identified in the page object all these menus, all these menu items, I create a factory where return me based. I can select based on the name, dashboard, teachers, students, parent, classes, attendance, blah, blah, blah. We have all this here. Or we can select based on an ID. So it's another factory that depend of how are you building your test. I can imagine that it's better if you are using the name of the menu that you're going to use. You can implement, and in the menu page, I only have this item, this element that I am verifying if a school name is visible. This school name that I hear, but for the menu, instead of having selector for this, selector for this, and selector for this, I only have one method: navigate to menu, and based on the name of or the number or the ID that we have in the factory, we can select or click, because this is using CS selector. This is the way that we can select the menu. And I try, in this case, I try to reduce the number of elements that we can have. Normally, as I mentioned, is not wrong, but you can create your element menu, uh, features, and then select, go to inspect and select, in this case, this, for example, class.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I need to create the students, and students, for example,
MN is main navigation.
yeah, it's a menu navigation. MMB. Menu, could be MNB or MMB. And then select the student. Ta-da. It's almost the same, so it will create a conflict with my own other element. No, it's different. So I can start adding n number of items, but definitely if you identify that it's something that you can share between your different elements, factory help us. For example, in this case, as I mentioned, instead of having all the elements in the constructor or wherever you need to put it, we have this factory that based on one element. In this case, this is a CSS selector, and using a string interpol string, we can use or select the item or select the ID that we have in our menu factory, and automatically will help us to select teacher, dashboard, attendance, or whatever we need to have. So we reduce the number of lines columns, we reduce the spaghetti code in this case, for example. Uh,
Okay, yeah, it looks very good for me. I'm totally impressed. I
Thank
want
you.
to have this, yes.
And the last, the assertions. As I mentioned, this is the assertion strategy. In this case, a class that could be inheritance. And I have only two different assertions. One is for visibility and text. The text is obviously getting the assertion strategy. And I can say, in this case, what is the action? I have text, or I have another execute that is not getting an element, is only expecting two texts to match, because this is for an element and this is for simple if you want to match two JSON files, or one file with an SQL output or whatever. And visibility, something very easy, is just be sure that the element is visible. And in the test cases, in the login, for example, this case, as I have my steps shared with all of these cases, for that reason, I try to extend from base test. The only step that I need to follow is the assert. In this case, after login, I need to verify that the school name is visible. This is the only line that I need to add into my test case and doesn't have all logins into all the test cases. In the second one, for example, the logout, if I am logging, I try to log out. And here I am using the factory get invalid combination that we saw, our username, ground username, ground password, and this is the text. Empty username, and the second is the empty password, for example. So in this case, I am using the data-driven testing technique in order to iterate over all those steps. And this is something important. It's a pattern that I didn't add uh, into the slide because this is a specific design pattern for unit testing called arrange, act, and assert, triple A. I don't know if you have implemented this design, uh, Roland.
Yeah, I think I have this all in the page class, and do not use these types of patterns. I'm thinking about it when it makes sense, and if I how I find out. So when we have here your login page and verify error label, and how I can get to this part and definitely know what kind of variable is used. It's not, in the test, there's only one method that I call, but then I have different kind of steps in different kind of files. And in this legacy testing projects, I have this all top down. And the question is, what brings me the improvement? I think the improvement is high standardization when you make a lot of projects with this to find something out, or to make reusable fill forms that you can say, hey, I have this add teacher or something, and on another project I have an add client or something like this, and then you can reuse the parts that you have here and make something that you maybe make and create item or something like this, and can reuse different kinds of forms in your tests, and so maybe you can fill forms faster.
Yeah, and also definitely, if we go back to the hierarchy system assert, is the way that you can split your test better. So the last part in the assert is when we have the assertion strategy, and this is this case for the adding a student. Yeah, same. I split into personal details into the details that we have per page, because we have split here, we have the parent details and all the interactions, parent details and account information and school details. So those are the interactions for personal, those are for account, and those are for school detail. Uh, I only
Can
need
you
to
let
create.
this test run?
Yeah, let's see. Let's see quickly. There we go. It will be faster. Trust me. So it's gonna students create new, start adding all the info that we have in our JSON file for students, submit the student, and then check and remove it in order to doesn't have it. And the test is completed. In this
Yeah,
case,
this is really fast. It's every time such an eye opener when you see how fast the tests are.
26 seconds. It's a good time, no?
Yeah, it's so much faster than when you do it yourself. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, if you run it over this UI that will help you to interact, something of the cool features of Cypress. Um, Definitely, if you run it into kernel mode, it's yeah. This is intention. You saw the execution faster. The way that we can follow gender as with first name and last name, with date of birth and blood group, sorry, to current address and city in country, is giving me the steps that I need to follow in my test case in order to create this action that I need to perform, the email, the username, password, confirm password, the school details, joining date, and rolling number. And at the end, in the assert, is verified student is added. How I verify? Just checking the table if the name that I added, in this case Anthony, is displayed on each element, and delete, in this case, the item that is found in order to clean my application to the beginning of the when we're working on it. So, well, that's uh, that's it in general about the design patterns. I don't know, what are your points, Roland?
Yeah,
Something that
maybe good presentation. It's totally clear for me. Was a nice introduction to understand the different kind of patterns and how you implement it, and you see the benefit and the value here in your test application. And yes, I want to look forward with it. Maybe with you, and we can refactor my base tests to design patterns if you want, or I can do this by myself and validate this when I ask you if I make the right things. Yeah, but thanks a lot. It was a great inspiration. And I see that you are working on much more complex SaaS solutions and testing steps than me. And I think this is a good way to avoid this too much complexity. And this is also a good example that you can say to the world, testing is the software that you need to survive your business, and you cannot make tests by a project manager who is interested in HTML or in a 10-hour guy from university who wants to go on in marketing or whatever. You need this kind of tests, and when you want to have successful tests, you have to create a very good software.
Definitely. I just want to say again, thanks for this invite. I am very happy. I will share with you guys the GitHub repo. You can download it.
Yes,
I,
this would be good. You can send me the links because you
mhm.
cannot provide links down in the YouTube comments, but you can give it to me. I will stop the screen sharing. So I think your English was really great. I understand anything. We have here hours, a lot of fun. And how was your English YouTube live coding session, intercontinental live coding session from all over the world?
I really, it's a complex war. It's a complex question. Sorry, but I try to do my best. Definitely, um, I came from Spanish languages. Definitely, uh, I learned by myself the English, but it's not. I know I need to improve all days. I try to do it. My projects are in English, but I always try to be sure that they understand at least some words that I'm saying, and hopefully for your people that is seeing this this live, it was something understandable.
You make it perfect. I
Thank you,
think
Ronan.
it's a great inspiration for anybody who wants to go forward with Cypress testing. Also, for me, it's great inspiration to use this, and it brings me away where I can how to handle complex stuff much better, because I have here a few tests that have every time this very many lines of code, and I love it.
Perfect. I'm happy to have this conversation, this live coding with you. While live coding, it was more like reviews and patterns. I hope the code that I show was enough for, because I know in your channel you have senior, you have managers and people that really has extremely knowledge on coding. And yeah, if all the people is I invite to modify this and increase the reliableness of the project. And just for the people that are starting in the testing in this automation, be sure that this will help them definitely for their projects, or give just a quick idea of how they can implement it on their own projects. No, it doesn't matter the context. If they are working on banking, they're working on a school, they're working education and technology. So the concepts are the same for all the kind of projects that the people is working right now.
Best closing words I've ever heard. So we will stay here a few minutes longer, but we will leave our live stream for now. Check out all our live coding sessions and follow the channel. Give us comments, ask us stuff, and connect with us on LinkedIn or wherever when you need some help with testing. And then have a nice evening or morning, like in Mexico. Bye.